All right. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Bob here at your Vitality Project. And I'm really honored tonight to have a returning guest, Eric Rogers. Eric, it's wonderful to have you with us tonight. Thank you, Eric, for joining me. Eric and I dived right in just now. Our topic tonight is how to grieve death in sobriety. That's a very significant postscript in sobriety. And I think I want to open the floor to you, Eric, and just to let everybody know what we talked about. As fate would have it, I just lost a dear friend on Monday who just passed away, and he's been a dear friend of mine in sobriety. He has been like a father figure for me, and I want to dedicate my portion of this, including listening to you, Eric, to the memory of dear Logan, a dear soul and dear friend of mine. And I want to open up plenty of space because, Eric, you initiated this topic, and you have a lot to say about this. I'd love to hear from you, Eric. Thank you.
First, thank you. And I'm happy that we can share this space for Logan and my mom.
Yeah.
It's been just over a month. And ultimately, my mom died of this disease. And I've shared on this broadcast before that it's now taken everyone except my sister and I and our children. And thank God they're minors at this point. And it was expected yet unexpected. I never expected to be told that my mother died with not bottles, but 36 bags of wine around her. This is a woman who had the world, the absolute world, in the way of not only material possessions, but everything that a woman of her age could want. Beautiful children, healthy grandchildren. And I've taken notes throughout this whole process. Yeah. And, and the one thing that death is ugly. And what death is to you with your friend Logan is it's not to compare to mine. And I've definitely learned through this process, I will never tell anyone again, I'm sorry, because I don't know what their sorry is. Your pain for Logan, it could be more joyous than mine while I struggle with watching another person die from this disease.
Yeah.
I was sitting with a young friend's child the other night, and it was funny. Sesame Street came on, and Sesame Street was a big deal in our house. And I don't know why, but Oscar the Grouch kind of reminded me of death. But around death is still all these beautiful things. You got Ernie and Bert, and I hadn't seen Sesame Street in years. And but it just kind of reminded me there's all these characters and all these events, but there is death. And I'm a 12-step guy, and I do respect that there's other people that there could be other smart recovery, and I'm not here to knock anything. It's just what's what works for me.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in my sponsorship family. It's turn to the book. Yeah. The book talks a lot about loss. Loss with Bill coming back from war, loss of the stock market. Nowhere in that book does it address death. Nowhere.
That's very interesting. Very interesting.
It addresses so many things. It addresses ego. It addresses love. Heck, we even put sex on page 69. But we don't address death. And that was one of the things that, and please, absolutely no disrespect to anyone in this statement, AA helped me get sober. You gave me the tools, but sobriety is much different than getting sober in those beginning days.
Good point.
How I use those tools is completely up to me. And yes, I've had these tools to traverse this. But it's just such a unique experience. That's something that we learn that, and we're taught, at least within AA and most 12-step programs, that, look to the book or what about this? We really don't address it. We don't. And I think this is one of the biggest things that if I probably wouldn't have had some one of those tools, so that's why I don't want my statement to be misunderstood. That I completely understand why people relapse over this. But what an amazing process over the last 30 days to be able to sit with this. We had another loss. We jokingly said my mom wasn't never going to be showed up. My sister lost her brother-in-law 2 days before. But to be able to traverse this, to be able, I'm a loudmouth. Like, you put me in a room with attorneys and my sister and everyone else, for me to walk out of there and probably say less than 20 words, that's a miracle. That's a promise. Let me tell you, that's an absolute promise for this program. But that's one of the things that I was most baffled by, that we don't talk about it. We talk about all these losses, and there are so many different types of losses. I've had the loss of a child through custody, not through death. There's loss of marriage. There's so many different things. And I was just so intrigued by that. And that was actually when I had that thought, that's when I texted you that day.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Yeah.
We don't address this enough. We don't.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that is, it would be, in fact, I don't think it would be, I think it is one of the top reasons for relapse past 1-2 years of sobriety. And we're still babies at that point. But,
Eric, something comes up for me as I'm listening. I really appreciate what you're saying. You and I have been in groups together, and I ask this question not infrequently in groups. I'll ask group members to say, what is your major stressor in your life right now? And I'd say 8 times out of 10 people will talk about relationships. They'll talk about friction with a girlfriend or a parent or a child or a boss or whatever. And just occasionally, and I'm going to change this, Eric, owing to our conversation, we'll talk about relationships, and I'll just pause and I'll say, how many of you have lost somebody close to you to this disease, to addiction? And as well as I, Eric, every single person in the room will raise their hands. If it wasn't a mother, it was a brother. If it wasn't, we just go down the list. And it's interesting is that we'll talk about stressors and we'll talk about relationships, but we won't talk about the loss of relationships. It's kind of that invisible factor there. And I know that from psychology, if you look at what stresses people out, they actually rate things in terms of stress. We're talking about the number one stressor here, losing somebody you care about. It doesn't go any deeper than that. So I'm right with you, my friend. I may even modifying my thoughts as I'm listening to you about this. And you and I are both in this. I'm in this. Psychology calls what I'm going through uncomplicated bereavement. Logan was a friend. He was in recovery. I knew him in the 12-step program. He was a mentor. And in some ways, he was the father I never had. In some ways, I might have been the son that he lost contact with. And I'm grateful for him. But there's no complications. It's just pure sorrow. And also, I have to tell you, honestly, some relief, because he suffered a lot towards the end of his life. With you and your mom, I can't presume to know this, but I think it might qualify as what psychology calls complicated bereavement, because there's all of this unfinished business that can't be really resolved. I didn't have that with Logan. A, wasn't my dad, but B, he was. Thank goodness for that in many ways. And we shared the same commitment to sobriety. And so I liked what you said. I can't begin to know how much more complicated this loss may be for you in this process. And at least we're talking about it, Dad Burnett.
I think that's half the battle, is talking about it. When there's transparency, it's amazing the things that can be healed, that can be happened. I was actually sitting on that couch right back there on Sunday morning when my sister called me, and it's weird. I always know, because Jody and I don't talk that much. But when she called me about my brother and about my mom, I looked down at the phone. And I already knew what the call was. But as you just mentioned, the first thought to go through my head was, I never got to make it right. I never got to say my sorries or my amends, even though if anyone knows the roles in an alcoholic family, I'm the scapegoat. The last year I hadn't spoken to my mom, not once. I even had to ask my sister, when was the last time I talked to Mom? Yeah. And interesting enough, and I think I've shared this with you, but I haven't shared it here. So December 4th is my belly button birthday. And I got a message that day, basically, happy birthday. She did suffer from dementia, but with the dementia, there was active alcoholism. So you didn't always know who you were dealing with.
Yeah, yeah.
And that message, like most messages, didn't end up with the most positive tone. My mom didn't know my sobriety birthday of the July 1st. And there was another message on July 1st that was very mean, very, very vindictive. And that's another thing we can transition into. But both of those messages that day, it's taken this process to where those were ugly to me. But I am so gosh dang grateful I did not delete those. Those are now the most motivating factors, because everyone not only dies of this disease in my family, they die alone, like completely alone. I have been with 3 people now as they've passed and taken their last breaths. And if anyone's done that, you know about the bone rattle that I talk about, and just the odd things that the body does that you can only experience if you're there. And to do that alone, I don't want to do that alone. And that's the beautiful thing about, you know, this program. And for me to say, hey, it's beautiful, it's just, it still baffles me that I'll say that, because as we've said before, you know, I'm the guy that fought this for 5 years, and I was going to come up with absolutely every excuse in the book. But the book does, the one thing it does tell us that I found in it, the only thing that I could find, and let me tell you, I probably read that book more in the last 30 days because I was just so baffled. There's so much in there, but there's nothing on death and grief and loss, even though there's so much loss in the book. It does tell us to seek outside help. And I think this was where, you know, Bill and Bob were one step ahead of us once again. And that's why I did say early on, please no disrespect to anyone that may be listening to this when I made my earlier statements. This is the time where you go to outside help. This is where we go to the professionals, the therapists, the psychologists. I'm beyond blessed, and I'm allowed to say her name, that I deal with a therapist that's in the program and has sobriety and has not walked my path, but walked a path of death and grief and loss across multiple sectors. And, you know, that's really been my rock, so to speak. And I've had some wonderful people. I was so exhausted about a week after my mom passed. I literally fell asleep on a Zoom call. And I one of the closing, I think, I don't know if I was chapter 5 or 12 traditions or something, but some of the pictures have been forwarded to me. There was some very nice. Thank goodness I was among my people.
Good.
Do you know what the amazing thing was? I was so embarrassed. I hopped in the shower to wake myself up. My phone is blowing up with the tribe, and mainly the guys like, bro, do we need to come over? Like, have you eaten? I mean, what do you need? They know they know I can't survive without the Diet Coke. Like, do we need to give you Diet Coke? And but that's, once again, the outside help. You know, that's where you got to reach deeper, and you've got to pick up the phone, as painful as it is, and as confused as you are. And, you know, and the one thing that I did get so frustrated with hearing was people putting a timeline on this. You know, the angriness, you're going to go through these phases, and it's going to take 2 years. And I heard that during my divorce too. Divorce is many years later, and I don't think I'm out of the anger phase. Another story. But you know, it's there's no timeline to this. I don't think I'll ever be resolved with this with my mom. I think what I can do is take the tools and just keep doing it. And that's what's gonna keep me sober. You know, we've got all these wonderful things that we can use that the program gives us, but they're just tools. And until you take them out of your belt, and you know, I've got a lot of tools that are in my belt that I don't know how to use until you pick up that phone, until you talk to that therapist, until you talk to someone who's got 15, 20 years of sobriety and has been through multiple losses. And the one thing that I've learned too, that if you do reach out, the good people in this program, I wish I could say a lot of names right now. They'll be the first ones to say, you know what, I don't know, but I know someone that does. I know someone that's gone through something real similar. That's great. And that's you know, that's the one thing that I've taken out of this is you've got to seek outside help. You know, because it's a journey, and it's a difficult one that if anyone's going through it, my heart can't go out to you enough. And whether it be a healthy relationship of a person passing, or a young person. Everyone's story is so different.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would be the first to support anyone that reached out. You know, the other thing is most of us in the program, I've noticed another commonality. We're usually adult children of alcoholics. And that, once again, reaching out, being put in contact, didn't even know there was a Zoom meeting going on right in my backyard. You know, it's that camaraderie of AA times 100.
Yeah, it's wonderful words of wisdom that you're offering. I really want to invite anybody who's listening to this now or will listen to it. It'll be posted on YouTube and on your Vitality Project. If you have interest in contacting Eric, all you have to do is just reach out to us at your Vitality Project. And Eric, I'll pass them along to you, because it's in the spirit of what you're saying. Is that it takes a village to get sober. I think it takes a village to sustain sobriety, and never more so than through the dark night that you're talking about right now, through loss, through grief, through death. And I'm just ditto all that you're saying here. I feel like that I've come increasingly to feel like that the program is there to help me get sober. And then I need to really exercise creativity to stay sober. And that means giving back to others, to give to you, you give to me. One of the things that's really touching to me about Logan is his wife reached out to me yesterday, and she said that one of the things that Logan appreciated about you, Bob, is that you made a commitment to come see him every Saturday, and you didn't not show up ever. And I feel like I'm the recipient of that. I committed to Logan. I met him in meetings here locally, and he couldn't go. And I just thought, well, I'll go visit him at home. I didn't make some plan that I'm going to be doing this every Saturday for the next 5 years. That's one of the finest gifts I've ever given myself, dear Eric, was Saturdays with Logan. I used to think of that book, Tuesdays with Maury. I had Saturdays with Logan for 5 years. Man, I am the luckiest man alive. And so I appreciate her reminding me of that, because I'd forgotten. Gosh, it's been all that time. But Logan and I survived a lot together. You and your friends in the program, there's a tremendous community. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about you, Eric, besides your incredible mind and spirit, is that there's your transparency, your openness. And I'm going to call it, that's the greatest gift I've received in the program. And then I'll come up with 5 more, is being in a place where we can talk about shadowy stuff. There was a book that came out when I was a much younger man, and I read it in about a week, called The Denial of Death. And the author said in this, Ernest Becker, he wrote this book. He won the Pulitzer Prize for this book, and he died of cancer. He wrote it while he was dying. He said that there's no nation on the planet that pushes death under the covers more consistently, more radically than the United States. And he was a U.S. citizen, as you and I are. And so we've got to bring this out. And I think it may rely on people like you and I in the program who are used to investigating the shadow. You want to talk about shadow, talking about death and grief and dying and loss. That is serious shadow in our culture. And you're single-handedly bringing this into the limelight today. I'd never recognized that it's not addressed in the big book. I believe you. I don't have a memory of that. Logan and I read through the big book over 5 years together. I don't recall our ever coming across that. All the more reason then that we bring that into the light, is that we've got these skills. Let's apply what we learned from Dr. Bob and from Bill W. and from our those in the fellowship, and let's apply it to something that maybe wasn't addressed before. Let's do that. We're doing it right now.
Without question. Your comments just made me think of another thing. It was was it the same day of the funeral or the next day? And and I knew there was somebody there that I hadn't talked to in a long time, but I knew his mom died of alcoholism, and why I thought this person was going to give me those godly saint words, to take this confusion away. I don't know, but I think you're at a funeral, and my mom's being put in with my father, who was, 1984. So that's all getting relived. And he goes, Eric, I've got some good news for you, and I've got some bad news. And I get choked up just saying this. And he goes, He said, the bad news is the pain will never go away, especially with that of a parent that died of this disease.
Yeah.
And he says, the good news is, he goes, I also know as an adult child of an alcoholic, you think your mother doesn't love you. And I just lost it. And he goes, if she didn't love you, it wouldn't hurt this bad.
That's beautiful.
And that was just so strong. And I was taken back by that, because I think at the absolute bottom of this, it's back like the Oscar to the Grouch. There's all this confusion and ugliness, but you know what? Oscar the Grouch at the end of the day is probably a good person. And she was a good person. She was my mom. There's so many beautiful things. And I'm not saying dismiss, I'm not saying bury the bad. But you know, I've realized that a lot of this pain is, there is love at the bottom of it. It's probably going to take some time to get to that core. But I just think back, and I'm only, what am I, 14, 15 months sober. There's no way I could have traversed this a year ago. There's absolutely no way. The gratitude that I'm finding in death, the opportunity to go back to my childhood home and that my father built, that I've passed by many, many times, but never had the guts to pull over and just knock on the door and say I could see the house. Only to find out when I got into this house, it was exactly the way my dad left it, and we left it 35, 36 years ago, down to the stove. And one of my fears was going in there and seeing all these drastic changes from my dad building his dream home. And that was just another lesson and another thing that's occurred in this process with my mom, was wanting to go back there, wanting to see that. And there were beautiful memories there. There was things that I didn't even know, you know, my little 5-year-old hands and feet stamped in the house, the cement in the driveway. Just all these epic things. But it's a journey. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's journey is separate. You know, I think if Dr. Bob and Bill a hard time that, you know, we can tell you how to get married, how to get in a relationship. We'll even address sex, but we won't, you know, address one of the inevitables of life, you know, death in the IRS.
I'm glad we're doing it today, my friend. Very glad we're doing it. I want to wrap up in a minute, but I just want to invite again anybody that has interest in following with Eric. I know Eric to know that you'll respond to anybody that wants to reach out, and you can reach out directly to me through Vitality Project, YouTube, whatever. I'd love to link you up. I think there are a lot of people out there that are living with their own grief, and you've been an exemplar today, Eric, to give people hope that they can make it through this and don't have to push it under the carpet, that they can actually move through this in a community where there's not judgment, but where there's compassion. So I thank you dearly, Eric, for suggesting this topic. You're gutsy and you're right on the money, my brother. We will stay in touch. We'll have you back again soon. I wish you blessings through this difficult time, my friend. Okay. Yeah. My heart's with you, Eric. Thank you again, brother.
To Logan's wife and his family, and especially his children.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, brother. It's wonderful. Yeah. Have a good evening. Take care, everybody. Thank you, Eric. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.